Hello, everyone. Welcome to Explore Loire Valley Whites. I am Molly Moran. I'm the owner of Table Wine. And in case I'm not glowing enough, I'm super excited to be talking about these wines tonight. I promised lots of jazz hands, so this will be the first set of them. If you don't know me, I'm enthusiastic about French white wine, particularly from the Loire Valley. So here we go. Giddy up. Get ready for it. If you are joining us live, I have two quick requests. One, if you could fill out the 2-question poll, just it helps me get a sense of what people who are joining us live like to drink and kind of like your familiarity with the lineup. And also, if you're joining us live, the question on the table tonight is, what's your pandemic like go-to meal, food, and are you going to keep eating it after the pandemic? If you are so inclined to do the bonus question. I don't know if any of you ever experienced this, where you have to come up with an icebreaker or like a question for the table, and then you don't think about your own answer before you've asked the question. So I was like, that's a great question. I'm curious what people have been loving. And then I was like, oh, I don't have an answer to that question. So I'll conveniently just talk about something else entirely. This year, my family, we've taken to once a month spinning a globe, and wherever all three of us get to do it. And so then there's a little bit debate as to whose place wins, but we pick a place and we research it and we eat food from the place and possibly watch a movie from the place. And that has been super fun. I had never cooked West African food before, and my finger landed on Benin. And so there we are. And so I learned how to make my own corn tortillas. And then this month, it was Brazil. And I have a friend who's Brazilian, so he's hooking me up with some really good recipes. So that's what I'll just transition to that. We're doing food adventure. All right. Are we all ready? So excited. And if you haven't answered the question, please do. I'm going to take a gander at the poll here real quick. It looks like we've got a kind of a spread in terms of the Loire Valley familiarity, or how often that's kind of like what you're drinking. So cool. We've got like the little bit of a gamut. And then we've got a lot of folks who are like, I'll just drink whatever. I'm not going to be picky. And then Sancerre being, about a quarter of the answers as well, which is not surprising to me. So let's dive in. I have one request for everybody. This is a request for all of you, whether you're watching recorded or live with us tonight. I'm super interested. Some people have shared pictures with me either through email or on Instagram of what your at-home wine class setup looks like. And I find it super interesting. So if you are inclined to share, you can tag at Table Wine Shop in your post or your story, or you can just email me personally, just a pic. If you're cool with me sharing it, I would share it too. But I'm just super interested. Like, some people have shared with me that like I'm on a big screen at their house, and that freaks me out. And other people, have like these cool outdoor setups and stuff. So I'm just curious. I'm curious how everybody's enjoying these classes. So that's my other request, if you're so inclined. So let's do it. Let's dig in. We're going to talk about some high-level kind of fundamental information, and then we'll get to the wines. If you don't already have wine in your glass and you want something to get started, our first wine of the night is going to be the Muscadet. So you can feel free to pour yourself some. But I know some people have started to little chatter about the wine, and that's awesome, and I'm glad you like it. But we're just going to wait to actually talk about the wine for a few minutes. So pour yourself some wine if you don't have some. So fundamental information about the Loire Valley. French wine, like wine all over the world, is classified by regions and sub-regions within those regions, and you get a little designation as an AOC, and that means that the wine has to come from this specific place. That's true throughout France. France was one of the earliest adopters of that kind of classification system, and I would say one of the most ardent supporters of it. There was a lot of, between the world wars, there was a lot of fake wine people were bottling and saying that was French. And so the French really like glommed onto this idea of the AOC. So that's what they call it. In the US, we call it AVA. So within the Loire Valley, which there is an AOC that is Val de Loire, so that would be the entire Loire Valley. Within the Loire Valley, there are 69 AOCs. So there are a lot of little tiny subregions. Within those, there are restrictions about what grapes you can grow, whether it can be white or red or rosé or sparkling, and that kind of stuff. So there are restrictions within AOPs. Within the entire Loire Valley, little more than half of the wine is white. So that is why tonight is Loire Valley Whites. I taught a different version of a Loire Valley class a little while ago. It's probably been about 2 years now, that was a wider spectrum. But I really do love these kind of narrow focus classes, particularly when we're only picking 3 wines. It's kind of awesome to zero in on this stuff. And really, there's nothing that gets me more excited than these 3 wines. So that's, selfishly, I love to talk about them. I'm going to show you a map in a second, but where the Loire Valley is, it's southwest of Paris, if you can kind of picture France in your mind, and it does abut the ocean. So because it has a pretty cool climate, and there are lots of different microclimates within the Loire Valley. I mention that because vintages can vary super significantly here. If you've ever taken class with me before, or you shop with us at Table Wine, you'll know that I don't spend a lot of time talking about vintages, not because it doesn't matter, but because a lot of the wines that we carry are pretty consistent from vintage to vintage. There'll be small changes, but the kinds of wines that we focus on are kind of intended to be the thing that, like, oh, I know that I liked that 2 years ago. Okay, yeah, it tastes mildly different, but it's not like drastic changes. And here in the Loire Valley, you kind of do need to pay a little bit more attention to vintages. So just a heads up about that. And these AOCs are grouped into 3 different regions: lower, middle, and upper. That's just information for you. You don't need to worry about that. You're never going to see it like on a wine label or anything. So don't feel like you need to remember that at all. History of wine in the region. Sorry, bear with me one second. There we go. So due to its proximity to Paris, it was, fertile ground for people wanting to be producing something in the region. It has all of these beautiful rolling hills and valleys. So the Romans first brought vines here in the 1st century BCE. And they were ecstatic about how the grapes grew. They really were very, very happy with cultivating grapes in the area. So honestly, it's like I'm just going to talk about so many centuries in one sentence. I'm going to say the Loire Valley really was what French wine was through the Middle Ages and up until the French Revolution. That's your sentence. Like, when people were talking about French wine, throughout all of the time, they really were just talking primarily about Loire Valley wine. There was wine in Burgundy, there was wine in Bordeaux, but what was being brought into Paris most frequently was Loire Valley wines. So they were really what anybody would know of as French wine. This is what, Marie Antoinette was drinking at the castle and all that kind of good stuff. So then something that is seen as a good thing for a lot of other reasons really hurt the Loire Valley industry. So they built a national railroad, and that meant that people in Paris could now have access to wines from Burgundy, wines from Bordeaux, wines from Provence, wines from the Southeast, Champagne. It was a lot easier to get stuff into Paris, and it kind of ties into my question of like, what have you been eating a lot of that you're kind of like, maybe I don't want to keep eating it now that I don't have to. There was a lot of like, all we've ever done is drink these whites. How about we drink something else? So it really kind of fell out of fashion. Fast forward to the early 20th century. France was really, really decimated by this teeny tiny little aphid, this little bug called phylloxera that ravages vineyards and eats vines and ruined the French wine industry for a little bit. And Loire was particularly hard hit by it. And it took them a while to bounce back. In the late 30s, that's when France decided to do that classification system that I mentioned, where they started to say, hey, wines are from these different places. At that time, Loire kind of really pushed to be part of that classification system, even though they were kind of like on the outs, you know, they were kind of not so well thought of. They said like, no, we need to be put on, you know, we need our own AOCs, and they got them, and it really helped them kind of rise back to fame. So I'm not going to say that they are as a collective unit of wines like anywhere near Burgundy, right? Or anywhere near Bordeaux. But I do think that people are much more inclined to drink a Sancerre than they are to drink a white Burgundy or something like that. Pardon me. Right? I think that like if there's one, Sancerre is the one. And I think it's a lot more popular than Bordeaux, white Bordeaux, something like that. So, oh, there's an aphid infestation in Houston. Well, I guess luckily for you guys, it's too hot to grow grapes there, right? Poor Houston, though. I feel like you guys just get the brunt of crappy weather things. Am I wrong about that? I mean, I know we have our brutal winters, but I don't know. I feel like every time I pay attention to what's going on in Houston, it's something else not awesome. You do, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do have good barbecue. And you're home to Brené Brown, aren't you? That's great. This is a map. I'm happy to bring it back at any time. I love that I say this is a map, as if you don't know that. This is a map of the Loire Valley. I'm happy to bring it back up at any time, but it's here just to kind of give us a sense of where we are. So I love down in the corner, in the right-hand corner, where it shows you like kind of where we are within France, and then where we are from kind of west to east and the places in between. So we're going to be in 3 of these 4 kind of central sub-regions. The varietals, these are the 3 that we're going to taste tonight, and they are the 3 that you need to know or pay any attention to if you care at all about Loire Valley wines. Sauvignon Blanc is king, most important white grape in the area. It is grown in the places that I have listed there and many of the other sub-regions. These are kind of the key ones, Sancerre being the one. So if you didn't know before tonight that Sancerre is the place and not the grape, now you know. Sancerre is always, white Sancerre is always Sauvignon Blanc. The other important grapes are Chenin Blanc, which we are going to taste with our Vouvray. And then the trickiest one is Melon de Bourgogne, which is our Muscadet. And so we're going to get there really soon. So I'll just pause and not say much more about Melon. Are there any questions about fundamental high-level stuff before we get started with the wines? I'm going to pour myself some wine. I'm so glad. I like you. I love that you love the history and overview. It's one of those things where like, I'm mindful of the fact that like, hey, we're all here to drink wine and, you know, right? It's fun. But I do feel like you've got to know that stuff before you can start drinking, right? You've got to know how important the wine is to the region or not important, or how important it is on the scale, you know, the scope of the country or the world, before you just start digging in. I feel like if you skip that stuff, you're kind of, you know, you can just go buy some Loire Valley wines. But I guess I structured the class that way, so obviously I like that. Obviously, this is my preferred format because I did it. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions about the overview stuff, let's dig in to Muscadet. So Muscadet is on the far western side of the Loire Valley. There are 2 rivers that come together here. They're the Sèvre and the Maine. I know it's not actually the Maine in my French pronunciation, but I do know that that is how we Americanize it in the wine industry. So these rivers come together. So there is both a region, an AOC called Muscadet, and there's a region called Muscadet, Sèvres, et Maine, and that is what we're tasting tonight. So it's just a more specific region within this area. Wines from either Muscadet or Muscadet, Sèvres, et Maine have to be Melon de Bourgogne. There are only white wines coming out of Muscadet, and they have to be this specific grape. I'm going to make myself big. I'm going to really look you in the eye here for a hot second. Listen to me for a hot second. Muscadet is a place. It is not related to Muscat, Moscato, any of that. The number of times that people tell me that they don't want a Muscadet because they think it's sweet makes me need to pause and tell you that Muscadet is not sweet, friends. So just it has nothing to do with that. It's completely separate. Okay. I think the most confusing part about the grape story here with Melon is that it's called Melon de Bourgogne. Melon of Burgundy. God, come on. Why you gotta do that? Why you gotta do that? So what happened was the monks in Burgundy came to the Loire Valley with this grape, and they were like, we think it would do well here. And they brought it there. And so it was known as Melon, because it has kind of these melony flavors. It was known as Melon of Burgundy because it came from Burgundy. I think it's really kind of confusing now out in the world, you know, here we are hundreds of years later, that the grape that's called Melon of Burgundy is not grown in Burgundy. You could never grow Melon de Bourgogne in Bourgogne. So there we go. That's my little rant about that. So if you've not had Melon yet, what you want to know about it, it's high acid, it is bone dry, and it's very light body. The acidity thing is going to run through for all three of our wines tonight. That's a calling card of all whites in the Loire Valley. Melon is known for mineral notes. As I said, it's pretty close to the ocean, so sometimes you can even get some of that like kind of salty, saline minerality. Green fruit, and I use that bucket. That's not a descriptor that I use very often, but it applies here because it can be lime, it can be pear, and it can be apple. Those are really the three fruits that you're ever going to smell or taste in Melon. And then yeast notes. That's not always true, but it is possible that some of you might pick up on it in tonight's wine. So I just wanted to give that to you as a possibility. So feel free to smell and taste. Katya and Drew are asking, is Muscadel related though? No, Muscadel is a totally different grape. Muscadel is its own little special beast. I'll come back to food pairings in a second, but as you all taste, I want to, and please do chime in and let me know what you think, how you're enjoying it. So I'm gonna be having some goat cheese as we speak, and it works well. Yay, that's great to hear. I love it. You love this wine. That's so great. I'm so happy. So fun, interesting, lots of happy faces over here. I'm glad. Oh, see? Oh, look, I just did it. The jazz hands just came out. Sean, you bring up the jazz hands. Apparently. So these are the barrels here at Chateaux Carré, the winery. And I'm gonna tilt that, yeah. So here you can see really kind of smaller on the label, and I know that most of you have the bottles at home, but in case you don't, or in case you're drinking something else. So here we've got the Muscadet Sèvres Maine, right? This is the place where, and then Surly. So what the Surly means there is that the wine is aged after the fermentation is, has done the job of, you know, the yeast eating all the sugar. Often in white wine, you will separate, winemakers would separate out the spent yeast particles. Those are called lees. Often they would separate those out. In the case of Muscadet, it's really pretty common to let the wines continue to age on the lees, which is what Surly means. So that means that they're letting the wines age in these specific barrels with the spent yeast particles there. What that does is it adds this body to the wine, right? And some of those yeasty aromas that some people are picking up on, and that weightier mouthfeel. I did mention at the beginning that when we were talking about Muscadet, that it's a light-bodied wine, and it is technically. But when you get one that's Surly, it does kind of trick your mouth a bit because it's a little rounder, a little softer. So if you see the Surly part on a bottle from Muscadet, if you see it, you know, on a glass list or something, in theory, they should have that, like, you know, any good wine list will have that part written out, because the difference between Surly and not is quite stark. Muscadets that are not aged on the lees are like little lasers. They are like a little, like, whoo, right back to the back of your throat, with their acid and their minerals, and they're so delicious, and I adore them. I just wanted to give you something different. I wanted to give you something else and to show you kind of like the rounder side. So do pay attention to that. It sounds like a lot of you in the chat are enjoying this wine, so that's awesome. So know that you can kind of check out the Surly wines. The other part of that is that Muscadets, particularly those that are aged on the lees, age forever. So you can stick this in your cellar, and I mean cellar like actual basement, or if you have a wine cellar or something like that, you can, you know, kind of see how Muscadets age, and what comes out more and more, the acid tampers down, the fruit kind of tampers down a little bit, and then you get that kind of like awesome bready, yeasty kind of thing. It's almost like champagne aromas, which is really super fun. The question is, it missed the detail, is this oak aged? I didn't say that. Yes, it is, right? It is aged in these barrels, not just some barrels, these particular barrels that I found a picture of. It is aged in those barrels. So yes, this is not for very long, but it is aged in them. The most classic pairing of Muscadet is to have it with shellfish of really any kind, particularly oysters, or moules frites. So now that sardine is back open, for those of you who are here in Madison, oh my God, you can go get oysters and mussels at Sardine if you eat shellfish and drink Muscadet and just be so happy. Jeff said, when did they open? They opened today. Today is opening day. You went last night. Oh, of course. Oh, no, I guess, yes, yesterday. Sorry, yesterday, Wednesday. I was like having my days mixed up. Of course you guys did. So jelly. Yeah, they reopened yesterday. So I think, Jeff, you're going to have to get on it, because like I've been told by people like, oh, I booked it for a month from now because that was my first time I could get it. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Oh, they take reservations online. I knew, by the way, as I was prepping for this class today that I was going to end up having to talk about sardine. For those of you who are not in Madison, if you've never visited Madison, when you do, whenever you feel safe to travel here, you have to go to Sardine. It's right on the lake, and it's just the best. And it has been closed this entire time. And I miss it dearly. I think all of us missed it dearly. So, anywho, back to this wine at hand. I can say that I feel pretty certain that they carry this at Sardine. If you are not a shellfish person, but you do eat seafood, it's also really lovely with lighter fish dishes. Things like trout, not so much like grilled salmon. So kind of think of it that way. And as we've already heard from someone, it's also great with goat cheese. But again, I'm going to like beat the goat cheese drum with all of these wines too. So how's Muscadet? Like, I feel like people enjoyed it. Questions about it? What do you want to know? A fun fact about this specific winery, the winemaker is third generation, and she's mixing stuff up a little bit. She's definitely not doing it all of the most traditional ways. And she decided that she really wanted to make sparkling wine. So that is not allowed by AOC rules. You can't put Muscadet on the label. So she makes a sparkling, I think, I don't have it, obviously I don't have it in front of me, I'm at home, but I think it's Val de Loire, but it's called Orgueil, and I think some of you may have had it at the shop before. I'll put that in the, it has a beautiful peacock, blue and green peacock on the label. I think some of you might have had it. So anyway, it is sparkling Muscadet. So it's sparkling Melon de Bourgogne, and it's just a really fun thing. So I think that's really, it's kind of cool to see in places like this that are super traditional, right? Their winemaking history goes back to the beginning of, you know, the Common Era, right? So to see somebody trying to be innovative is really pretty fun, I think, while still making what is delicious and beautiful and wonderful. And there's a reason that there's a tradition around it, right? Because I think that that's also true. How can you tell if something has yeast notes? If you can't tell, my wine knowledge is, oh, that's fine. So Jeff, are you asking like, how are you supposed to know if this wine has yeast notes, like this specific wine as you're drinking it? Or are you asking, can I tell when I'm looking at a bottle? I'm just kind of curious which. I'll wait for, I'll see if this wine, I'm not picking up on it. Okay. I would say that I don't think it's particularly like dominant in this wine. I picked this wine to talk about the surly thing and to give you kind of an example of kind of a rounder one, but I don't think that it's like, oh my God, it smells like sourdough starter. But those are the kinds of things that you can kind of have in your mind if you're familiar with any of those smells. It's not going to be as obvious, like champagne. Actual champagne from France is kind of the place where you get yeasty aromas that are like the most obvious, where they would smell like freshly baked bread or like croissants, right? Like where like you can like really truly smell like the pastry part of it or the yeast part of it. Here, I wouldn't say it's as obvious. I think that if you have it in the back of your mind as you kind of smell this wine, I have to pour myself a little bit more. If you have it kind of in the back of your mind as you're tasting and smelling, you might be able to pick up on something a little like creamy. It also kind of shows up as creaminess, like smelling like fresh cream. Not that it tastes creamy, but that it has that kind of creaminess. And if you're not picking up on it, you're not picking up on it. And don't stress about it because it's really, I think, decently subtle in this wine. I don't think it's like a hammer. So if you like it and you like it, you're the one who I believe who was eating goat cheese. If you like the wine and you like it with what you're eating, like call it a night, right? Doesn't get much better than that. Oh, allergies are just horrible right now. They're just like, man, they are monstrous. And I feel terrible, right? Like walking to work and having like a little allergy attack, right? And like sneezing on the street. And I'm just like, oh, I'm trying, you know, I swear it's just allergies. Right? Having it with Hook's blue cheese and smoked duck. That sounds delicious. And Alexis is saying that it's probably the second Muscadet you've ever had. I wonder if the first was the first time I taught Loire Valley class. I purposefully picked an entire different lineup. I mean, it was long enough ago that they would at least be new vintages, even if they weren't new wines, but I purposefully, I know some of you have been taking classes with me for a very long time. And so I was like, well, we got to try new things. All right. Any lingering questions about Muscadet? And please just do remember Muscadet, not Muscat. That's all I want you to know. When you go out into the world, when you leave me today, Muscadet is dry. It's crisp. It's dry. Sometimes it tastes like this. All right. All right, guys. We're going to go to Vouvray. So, Vouvray is, actually, I'll bring the map back up for a second so we can can show you kind of where we've moved to. So we were here in Muscadet over on the western side, and now Vouvray is kind of like smack in the middle of the Touraine area. It's right by Tours, and this is Chenin Blanc land. So wines in Vouvray have to be made from Chenin Blanc, but they can be sparkling or still. So I did mention just a moment ago that in Muscadet, you can't have this. The Vouvray is what you should open next, because that's what we're doing the Vouvray next. In Muscadet, you can't have sparkling Muscadet. In Vouvray, you sure can. And actually only about 50% of the wine in Vouvray is still. There's actually quite a bit of sparkling. So here, the grape is Chenin Blanc. Again, we have high acid. Again, we have light body. But here we have a sweetness spectrum, a huge range in sweetness, which I will talk about in a little more depth after we kind of like do the initial taste and stuff of the wine. So Chenin Blanc, if you don't know it, I know that it's a grape that some people really know and explore a lot, and other people like never drink it. So if you don't know it, or just want a refresher, it's known for citrus and tree fruit notes. So that can be things like apples. It can also be like peaches and apricots, somewhat sweeter things, citrus like lemon, sometimes grapefruit, those kinds of things. It's also known for floral aromas. It can be floral on the palate as well, but it's often kind of a more of a smell than a taste, and some honeyed notes. That's a really common descriptor for Chenin Blanc and specifically for Vouvray. Because it varies so widely in sweetness, the food pairings that I'd recommend with Vouvray are going to be a little bit more wine specific, because it's going to really differ whether we're talking about a sweet wine or a dry wine. So tonight's, the one that we're drinking tonight, is dry. So these food pairings are specific to this particular wine. Cheese souffle is really pretty common. I don't know if you all make souffle, but I do, like, a lot. And it's just ridiculously delicious with Vouvray. Roasted pork, it can handle some meat. And then it's really great with like kind of weightier seafood. So crab, lobster, could do salmon, something like that. So crab cakes and kind of things like that. So that's kind of the Vouvray story. So give it a go. Also goes well with goat cheese. It does. I just like took it off the thing because I'm going to talk about goat cheese again with Sancerre. And so I didn't want to sound like a broken record. I wanted you guys to know that I can talk about food pairings beyond goat cheese. That's not the only, I don't know, tool in my toolbox. So tell me what you guys think of this one. Just get so excited. While you think, while y'all taste and drink. The sweetness in Vouvray matters. So what we are drinking tonight is sec, which it does say it under the vintage. I'll make myself big for just a hot second so that anybody who's not drinking the wines along with us tonight can see it. So it does say sec right here, which does mean dry. So that's your only indication that this is dry. The most common things you're going to see on a bottle of still Vouvray is sec or demi-sec. So dry or half dry. The tendre and the sweetest moyau you'll see them sometimes, but like they're not very common around here. Moyau Vouvray is like dessert wine, so you wouldn't see that so much. But the difference between sec Vouvray and demi-sec Vouvray is drastic. I know some people are very sensitive to sweetness or don't really like it. And so I just want to like mention that if you like tonight's wine, don't just like go out willy-nilly and buy all the Vouvray, because they do vary quite a bit. Within sparkling, the spectrum is Brut, which would, I think that would ring a bell to a lot of you. It's common with sparkling, or demi-sec again. So it's gonna say that again. So demi-sec is going to be the sweeter version. So you get to decide for yourself whether you like that and you want to explore it, or you don't like it and you don't want to explore it. We actually carry a demi-sec Vouvray from the exact same winery that we've carried since the day we opened. Bourillon demi-sec Vouvray is my favorite. I love it. It's a scratch and sniff label. This one is not a scratch and sniff label. I'm kind of disappointed that their dry one does not have the amazing scratch and sniff. Very smooth, kind of elegant mouthfeel with plenty of acid to balance, and it's bright and acidic. Yep. I agree. I think the mouthfeel is just like kind of amazing. The distinct savory flavor. I mean, it's funny. I like almost am getting like a bready thing here, which is kind of unusual. But I often, and that's like that honey thing that like, it's very hard for us to separate the idea of honey flavor from honey sweetness. But often that's what it is with Chenin, when you're kind of picking up on that thing that you're like, I can't quite get it. It can be like, when I say honey, I don't necessarily mean that it's sticky sweet, but that it has kind of that aroma or flavor of it. I don't know if that helps. Feels heavy, not heavier. Yes, heavier, but not heavy. Yeah, I agree completely. Yep. It's interesting. Each of these wines takes a step up in ABV, like by 1%, which is why we started where we started and where we're ending. But they do have kind of like a significant difference, I think, and I think we'll all notice it a bit. Is residual sugar labeled on these wines that have a spectrum of sweetness? So yeah, by saying that it's sec, it has to fall into a category, like a range of residual sugar. So it's not going to ever tell you like that it's, 4 grams per liter. But you know that within sec, it's from 1 to, I don't know off the top of my head what the classification is for sec and demi-sec. I think it's like 6 grams per liter would be the sec, and then like the jump up from there. So you're never going to see like the exact numbers. Some wineries might have that info. French wineries are notoriously not awesome on their websites. But if sugar is of concern to you, you can kind of just know, like, look for sec, and then you'll be good. If you are open to like, I want to try all of it, or like, I'm curious to see what it tastes, or like it tastes like. The demi-sec Vouvray and spicy Thai food are like kind of the most delicious wine and food combination you can think of. Like more heat in your food, and then the sweetness just like makes sense. It clicks and it does something for you. It's not just like sweet to be sweet. It's just absolutely phenomenal. If that doesn't sound appealing to you, then don't do it. But for those of you who are willing to explore, I would say do it. Alexa's saying getting the honey flavor, and Jason saying get a lot of apricot. Yeah. There's this scene in Notting Hill. I don't know how many of you know this movie, but where Hugh Grant has like, he's like offering random food to Julia Roberts, and he has like some apricots that are like preserved in honey or like dipped in honey or something like that. And so frequently when I taste Vouvray, I think about apricots dipped in honey. Like I think of that movie scene so frequently, because I'm like, I've never actually had apricots that are dipped in honey, but I feel like I know what they taste like by drinking these wines. So we taste the honey as in the floral notes. Yeah. I think that's spot on. It's very challenging to separate those two things. The one other thing for Katya and Drew, who are kind of getting some sort of savory thing. The other thing that I sometimes pick up on. Tonight, I'm not getting it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there or that this might not resonate with you or anyone else out there. Nuttiness. And sometimes, like the way that I like to think about it, because it's not quite like I bit into an almond kind of nuttiness. Like if you're eating a peach and you get too close to the pit and you kind of like accidentally get a little pit. It kind of like reminds me of that, where it's like both fruit and the stone of the fruit. So I don't know if that resonates with you or not, but that's kind of how I often think of it. How are others feeling about the Vouvray? I love the texture on this. I gotta say, I just really love like how long after I sip it, it's still like lingering in my mouth. I think that it's just, I love it. I do love it. I haven't carried this wine in the past because the demi-sec does so well for us, and I didn't want it to be confusing for customers. I was like, like I don't want you to think that you're grabbing the sweet thing that you've known for 4 years and then get the dry thing and be like, oh, that's not what I wanted at all. But I will say the labels look really different, and so I'm going to rock it out and have them both at least for a little while because I do like it a lot. A flavor that comes and goes immediately, and I can't name it. Pepper? Curious. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I'm not getting that, but that doesn't mean you're not getting it. Like if you're getting some sort of herbal thing, that totally makes sense. That's totally fair game. You are more than validated. You're absolutely allowed to taste that, smell it. And Alexis is saying such a difference between how this one lingers and the first one didn't. Yeah, and I would say like if we had an even crisper muscadet, it would have been even starker comparison. Like it would have been even more distinct because like the muscadet that we had actually is a little bit rounder. I should say someone asked earlier, and I didn't answer it, and I apologize for this. Somebody asked earlier, like how long could you age a muscadet for? Like a really long time, like a decade. You could play around with aging it, frankly, even longer than that. If you're up for it, you're totally like, nothing's going to happen. It might just not taste that interesting after a certain age, but I've tasted some aged muscadets that are just like really cool. They just take on these different flavors. And I don't know if any of you, I think some of you may have taken this class a while ago. We did a cellaring class at the shop. I want to say it was maybe December of 2019, possibly, where the person, it wasn't me teaching it. Tom Loop is somebody who sells me wines. He sells me the muscadet, and he taught the class, and he was actually generous enough to bring wines, from his own cellar. And he brought a different muscadet that's aged on the lees, and then he brought an aged version so people could taste them side by side, and it's so fascinating. So like that muscadet is like I think $16. So maybe grab an extra bottle next time and just like stick it in a cool place and see what happens in 5 years or so. Try it out. I'm so glad. It's so interesting. That's so cool. I'm really glad. I think Vouvray is fascinating, particularly when you start to experiment with the sweetness thing and you start to like get to know it a little bit. It's just, and I really like Chenin Blanc. I think it's an undervalued grape. I don't think people drink it as much as they, I don't want to say should, but like, I think it meets a lot of people's tastes, and people just like don't know to give Chenin a try. Mm-hmm. I'm so interested by this pepper thing that's going on. I don't know, guys. Jenny's comment is, this tasting makes me glad I have opened my wine world to whites. And that makes me so happy. I love it. I love it so much. It just makes me so damn happy. I love when people are up for trying different things. opening themselves up to, something new, something that they didn't think they liked. And, I think for a lot of people, I'm not speaking for you, Jenny, but I know that a lot of people I hear at the shop think that they don't like white wine because all white wine is sweet. And you're like, man, there's like a whole world where there's not sweet wine, right? Including in the Loire Valley. So, all right, if there are no more questions, we're going to move on. You guys can keep chatting about what you think this flavor and aroma is that is reminding some people. And more than Chardonnays, it's so true. White wine is not just all Chardonnay. Though I love me some Chardonnay, but it's not all Chardonnay. Okay. It's time to go to Sancerre, guys. So Sancerre is way over in the east. Sorry if that made you nauseous to go through the slides so quickly. So it's over here, way, way, way on the far east side of the Loire. And unlike our other two regions that we've talked about tonight, Sancerre does produce rosés and reds as well as whites. Now, it is still primarily a white wine game by far, far and away. It's still a white wine game, but there is some rosé and there is some red. So just heads up, the way that we have things organized at our shop, you would never pick up a bottle of red Sancerre, not knowing that it was red Sancerre, because it would be on a shelf with just red wines. But I have been at wine shops where, it's just like the French wines are together, and I've grabbed a bottle of Sancerre, and, in a bottle this dark, like you can't necessarily tell what color it is inside. And then you're like, oh shit, that's red wine. That's not white wine. So white Sancerre is always made from Sauv Blanc, again, with our high acid, again, with our light body, and dry. I would say not as bone dry as Muscadet, but still very, very dry. The one that we are drinking tonight is 14% alcohol, so it doesn't really feel as light-bodied as like the classic objective description of Sancerre would have you believe. So there's a little variance there. Sancerre, Sauv Blanc from Sancerre is known for citrus and more tropical fruit notes. So none of this peachiness, none of this apple stuff. It's more like melon, grapefruit, lemon, those kinds of things. Herbs come up a lot, grass comes up a lot, and minerals. The soil here, I'll show you in the next slide, is this mix of pebbles and bigger rocks, and the primary stone type in Sancerre is limestone, and it plays a huge role in why Sancerre tastes the way it does. Why does this Sauv Blanc taste unlike Sauv Blanc from anywhere else in the world? Sancerre, if you don't know it, or just don't know that much about it, Sancerre is really thought of as the world's premier Sauvignon Blanc region. The wines of New Zealand, the Sauv Blancs of New Zealand, are taking what they can do in their climate and their terrain using Sauv Blanc, but there's always kind of this like coming back to Sancerre as kind of like, the home base of Sauv Blanc. There is a grassiness to Sancerre that then in New Zealand is like, whoo, opulent. There's a citrusiness to Sancerre that then in New Zealand is, sometimes a hammer. But and I just tasted this wine for the first time just a week or two ago. I hadn't picked the Sancerre yet for the class. And I tasted this and I thought, first of all, it would just be fun for those of you who do shop with us a lot to get to try a different Sancerre. And for those of you who don't, just like, it's delicious. And I think it's a really lovely example. It is a little rounder than some Sancerres, but man, I just get like this lovely grapefruitiness at the end that it just makes my mouth so very happy. Here's a picture of the soil. This is not, I couldn't get a good picture from the winery. They don't have like the best pictures on their websites, but this is a picture of the soil in Sancerre. So it plays a huge role. If you are interested in soil stuff, want to talk more about it, sometime in the fall, I'm going to plan on doing a soil class, which will be nerdy as hell. So if you want to get your nerd on, we'll do soil class at some point. Yes, the grapevines do grow out of that. Isn't it fascinating? I think that's one of my favorite reasons to kind of share pictures like this. Like there's a belief in the wine world that the harder grapes have to work, or I'm sorry, vines have to work, the better the grapes are. And, you know, of course, there's like the metaphor for life, right? Like the more we struggle, the stronger we are, blah, blah, blah. I think there's some truth to it. Because that's where these vines grow. And then the wine comes out tasting like this. Generally speaking, grapevines don't like good soil. They don't grow well in places that have good soil. That's why when people are talking about, you know, cool climate grapes and are we going to see wine kind of explode here in Wisconsin? Are we going to see wine explode, you know, in Missouri and Iowa? And they're doing some of it, but like also the soil in Iowa, you know, pretty great. And so vines don't really like that. They want to have to work. Super floral. What kind of gravel is that? So it's limestone. It is limestone, just like here. I do think that there is like some through line with why we here in Wisconsin, I know some of you all are joining from other places, but those of us here in Wisconsin, Sancerre like reminds us of our water. It reminds us of what everything smells and tastes like around here. How do others feel about this? It's not as grassy. It's not as green as some Sancerres. But I think that you can take this and think, if you've had New Zealand Sauv Blanc, you can be like, that's why they go for that grapefruit thing so much. Because, you know, there's kind of like this benchmark of that. Back to our friend's goat cheese in terms of food pairing. There's a town within the region of Sancerre called Chavignol. And some say that that's where the very best Sauv Blanc in Sancerre comes from the town of Chavignol. And you can find goat cheese from Chavignol. I believe you can even find it at the co-op. I know I have before. So if you really want to get like totally nerdy about it, you could get actual Chavignol and do that. Because this does have a little bit more weight to it, it could go with something like roast chicken. And then it's just like the acid, the herbaceousness, all of it is like ratatouille heaven. So when all of that good stuff, peppers and tomatoes and everything are ripe later in the year, don't forget about this. Yeah. Yes. We're big fans. Herb sprinkled grapefruit flavor. I love herb sprinkled grapefruit. That sounds delicious. I love it so much. Yeah. I think it's great. And I think as it, I don't know about you all, but as it's kind of like warming up a little bit, I think it smells rockier and rockier. I know minerals can be kind of hard for people to pinpoint, but I think that like, if you think of limestone, I mean, if you think of like what it is like to be by the lake here, or, you know, be out kind of in a state park or something like that, where you'd be able to get away a little bit and smell just like the soil a little bit more, the earth a little bit more. It really does smell like that. The minerality is lovely. I'm glad. I just think it's like, one thing about, I mentioned at the beginning that vintages really vary. So they've had kind of a tough go with things in the Loire Valley within the last few vintages. There's been like really early frosts that have decimated some of the vines. There was a hailstorm a few years ago. And then 2020 was just a hell of a year. Wasn't it? Wasn't 2020 just a hell of a year? It was a hell of a year from a wine perspective too. There's just like a lot weather stuff. COVID stuff, shipping stuff, tariff stuff. There's just been like a hell of a lot. And all of that combined has led to Sancerre prices specifically really going up. When Table Wine started in 2015, we were able to pretty easily find a Sancerre that retailed for $20. And that was very important to me. And like those days are just behind us and we just can't. And so now, you know, they kind of hover like entry level Sancerres kind of hover around 30, which for some people is like, yeah, cool. It's Sancerre and it's delicious and I'm happy to spend that kind of money. And other people are like, that's going to keep me from drinking it. And I think that that's like, you know, I think that's fine. So there are lots of other places. If you like this and you're like, yeah, but this isn't like everyday pricing, there are other Sauv Blanc regions within Loire that you can explore. So do know that we are happy to hear it. I'm seeing these compliments in the chat and thank you. You guys are so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. You know, this week's been really weird because now as of June 2nd here in Wisconsin, as of June 2nd, we won't have any direction from public health anymore. And we don't have any direction from the CDC anymore. And so there's this kind of like, what happens? And I'm fully vaccinated and my staff's fully vaccinated and I'm starting to open my personal life up a little bit more, but I don't know exactly what to do at the shop. And I don't know exactly what events are going to look like and when do people want to do classes in person and all that stuff, you know? And so thank you guys because you show up for these classes and that means the world to me. And you're not just having me be here in radio silence talking to myself. You know, like you engage and I really do appreciate it. And your support has just been, I'm gonna start to cry. Your support has just been amazing. So thanks. Yeah, thank you all very much. I'm gonna gather myself together. All right, so we are coming up on time. Please let me know lingering questions as you have them or thoughts about any of the wines, anything you wanted to ask that you didn't. On the topic of events and stuff, I'm kind of slowing down the schedule in case you haven't noticed. I'm kind of slowing down the schedule just because I know people have a lot of stuff going on, man. There's a lot to do. There's a lot going on. So we have rosé class next month. So it'll be almost a month again until I teach again. And it's rosé class. If you've not taken it, actually, even if you have taken it, like every year since I've started offering it, you should take it again because it's a blast. And I think that you'll learn a lot. And my intention is to really drive home the fact that there is a rosé out there for everybody. So if you think you don't like rosé, take the class. If you know you love rosé, take the class. And then Chardonnay. Speaking of Chardonnay, hey people who are drinking white wine tonight, you have to come to Chardonnay class because the point of that class is to show you how freaking delicious Chardonnay is and they're not all buttered popcorn. And I promise, I'm vowing now that there will be a Chablis or some Chablis-like French minerally goodness in that class. So I promise that it will not be the buttered popcorn show. So come to that class. And I did give a shout out the last class I taught, which is if you have any ideas, if you have any thoughts about classes you would like to see, whether that's virtual or in person, I'm open. Shoot me an email. If there are things that you're interested in, very specific regions, grapes, really broad topics, I'm open to all sorts of things. You know, I definitely have some ideas in the hopper for sure, but I'm also curious what you all want to learn about. So let me know. All right, any other questions? Anything else y'all want me to know? You're so great. Thank you. Did I do enough jazz hands? I feel like I stopped with the jazz hands. Katya and Drew, Jura wines would be a little tricky because there really just aren't that many available. So we can talk if you wanted to do a private tasting sometime. We could do a private tasting, but there's just not a breadth of Jura wines. So Oh, thank you. Oh, yay. The Sancerre is a dream. Yay. I'm so glad. I really, like I said, when I tasted that wine, I was like, oh, this wine. This is the wine for this class. I'm just so great. So I'm so glad, guys. All right. Well, let me know if you think of any classes. I'm your girl. Hit me up. And otherwise, I hope to see you all around the shop soon, or at least in the chat if you can't come to Wisconsin. So bye, everybody.